Joining me now is Congressman Khanna of California, who serves on the House Armed Services Committee. And Congressman, I know that you have been early out there calling for a ceasefire. Were you surprised by President Biden's tone last night? Because it did seem to me to be markedly different in that he did center the suffering of Palestinian women and children in a way that I had not heard him do before.
Joy, I was pleased by what the president has said. In private, he has expressed to some of us his concern about what Netanyahu is doing, and I'm glad that he made that statement publicly. The reality is what Netanyahu is planning in Rafah is unconscionable. You have 1.4 million people who are living in that city. They've been told to go there. It's one of the only places they could escape the bombing. They're facing possible starvation, facing a lack of drinking water. The United States is saying, do not attack Rafah. Our country is saying that. The international community is saying that. And Netanyahu, in blatant defiance of the United States of America, of our president, our military, is considering going in, launching strikes, which would be a humanitarian catastrophe.
Then what does that say about our leverage? You know, I mean, you had South Africa take Israel to the international court, you know, to the UN court, and that did not slow them down at all. In fact, all that's happened since then is that the U.S. and Europe have defunded UNRWA, which is for a lot of Palestinians the only way that they get aid. You've seen blockades of aid going into Gaza by protesters who are saying they want to shut down all aid to go in, and that seems to be effective. What leverage do we have? And at some point, isn't the leverage the money we're sending and the bombs we're sending?
Well, it is. And I think you see the president reaching the end of his patience to say that Israel has been over the top. And ultimately, the president has enormous leverage. I mean, when President Reagan told Menachem Begin to stop in Lebanon, within hours he stopped. When President Biden in the past told Netanyahu, your runway is over in 2021, Netanyahu stopped. And I think the more Israel continues to do things like go into Rafah, the more they're going to lose the support of the administration. And the vote in the House, where the overwhelming majority of Democrats voted against a blank check to the Israeli government, should be a wake-up call.
One would think so. Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, is in the region. He met with Netanyahu. Do you think that behind closed doors that threat is being made, that if the defiance of essentially the person paying the bills here for this war, if it continues, that the sending of weapons, including bypassing Congress to send weapons, will stop?
Yes, I don't think it's a threat. I think it's just a statement of fact. Look, the administration went out of their way to spend enormous political capital to support Israel with a understandable, after October 7th, there was a right to get the Hamas perpetrators. There needs to be a release of all the hostages. And the president went out of his way to do that. But their expectation was that Netanyahu would then minimize civilian casualties, would listen to the United States government. And here's the reality. Netanyahu has defied this president. How dare Ben-Gvir, Israel's foreign minister, have the audacity to criticize Joe Biden, have the audacity to criticize the American people? And I think that's rubbing a lot of people the wrong way, because in this country, you have respect for the American people. You have respect for the American president, and Netanyahu is showing no respect for the American president.
In Congress, you had some Democrats join in condemning formally Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib for her comments about, her own people, her relatives, in Gaza and in the Palestinian territories. Is there a shift inside of the caucus to say, wait a minute, maybe, yourself and others who've been for a ceasefire might have been on the right side?
There is, Joy. Now there are almost 63 members of Congress who have called for a permanent ceasefire and a release of all the hostages, including people like Jamie Raskin, and that number is growing. There is an increasing concern about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. I mean, 400,000 people, according to the United Nations, face starvation. Children are going without food and water. And I do think that this is something that many members of Congress are now deeply concerned about on the Democratic side.
We will watch what continues to happen. Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.
Joy, thank you.